All right, hey y'all, it's Nick. It's January 24th at around 3:30, and I'm remaking this video. I already made it once, and then upon completing this video, first time, I realized I went out of order, so to speak. So I decided to go backwards, click the delete button, and kind of start fresh with some content this week that is in the right order this time. And to kind of explain that, I went to our Moodle page, our class Moodle page, and then now I'll go through a notes assignment as well on this page, but it's different than my original plan. So first and foremost, if you have not started the weekly work for week 2, I want you to check some things out. The first thing is this band premises list. I put together the list of things that are cliche according to some of you and according to some discussions and according to my experience. And this could grow for sure. But these are the things that we are not going to do in this class. We're not going to use Once Upon a Time or Happily Ever After. We're not going to ever use a buzzer beater win or final inning home run or grand slam or like these incredible comeback stories. I've just read so many of them. The bad boy or girl to relationship or an enemies to lover storyline. You know, these are just getting really like watered down. They're getting so popular. And then predictability. Obviously, we want to avoid predictability. The intergalactic star chase stories. Hero fiction. Hero fiction is something that you can dabble in. I've had some really good hero stories written in this course. I've had some really poor hero stories written in this course. Just avoid being cliche, please. Element stories were brought up, and then stories. This is just my own. Standing in front of a mirror and getting ready for the day. I feel like I've read that so many times. I just don't want it, okay? But anyway, that's the band premise list. I also have a slideshow of conventions for fantasy sci-fi writing. I want you to read through that if you haven't done so. And then an assignment on writing with detail. I've already started collecting submissions for this, but if you haven't done it yet, you need to read these instructions. It is pretty simple. You're picking a place that you love, a childhood area or an old stomping ground from high school or just a place that's really near and dear to you. And you are going to describe it in 250 plus words as vividly as possible. But don't just stop at a picture. Give me some smells and textures and sounds. We're going to ideally write with just a high level of description in this assignment. And the idea of this assignment is not that you need to be a fluffy writer, because that's the last thing I want is for you to be fluffy. But when we are talking specifically about fantasy and sci-fi, being able to help your reader picture where they are at is crucial, right? Setting design is one of the foundational elements of fantasy and sci-fi writing. So starting your writing off, right, when we get into the next few weeks and we start bigger assignments, starting off with some setting details that are really rich and vivid is going to be key. So I really want to just ensure that we practice that. So do this assignment and then reply to one other person in the class as well. That's your assignment for this. Yeah. But then on to notes. What are we going to do? This will technically be what we are like Friday, so to speak. This will kind of be like a Friday assignment. After you create setting in a sci-fi and fantasy story, the next step is to build characters. That's not surprising. If you look at this conventions of fantasy and sci-fi writing slideshow, we hit setting first, and then we are following it up with characters that make sense, are realistic. Even though they're fictitious, they're realistic, they're genuine, they're well described. And this is actually hard, right? You can't just start adding fluff to your writing and have great characters. We're kind of going to be beyond that, right? Creating great characters is very intentional. I'd say it's a skill within writing. It's a skill within a skill, so to speak. And what we really, really are going to be aiming to do is develop characters that can speak to readers in a way. Right? I think the example that comes to my mind is creating a Spider-Man rather than a Superman. I don't know if that metaphor connects with everybody, but what we really want is, even within a fictional space and a made-up character, we want enough likable and relatable and realistic enough traits within that character that readers have something to kind of grab onto. That's how we make characters speak to readers, is through relatability, and how we get to that relatability is kind of a path. It's not just a clear answer, it's a path. And so to sort of help you guys with that path, I, through just, I've already started this, through just a few semesters of teaching this course, and through my experience writing, I created a little bit of a mnemonic for you that you can kind of use as a paragraph writing structure. This would be one paragraph, but you could also make it 2 or 3 paragraphs. And the idea is that by following this structure, you would have really good characters in your stories, or at least the start of a good character. I'm really using this model to introduce new characters. You're not going to do this all the time throughout a story, every time a character gets brought up. This is how you introduce a character. So again, as you start writing a story next week, I want to see setting first, really rich setting details, and then that character is kind of embedded into the setting naturally. And this is gonna be a way in which we create a paragraph that's really good, and introduces the character well. So it's SPAIR, the SPAIR character development model. I have ripped this off of another person. They have what's called the PAIRS character development model. This is another teacher of Creative Writing 240. I'm taking PAIRS and I'm repurposing it for our sci-fi fantasy, and it's SPAIR. Okay, so here's what we're going to do first. The S of SPAIR stands for situation. Okay, it is a connection between the setting and character that makes sense, right? Because you're starting your paragraphs and your sentences out with like these setting details that are really rich and vivid. The next thing you do is you place the character within them in a way that makes sense. So you have to develop the situation in which the character is inhabiting. There's 2 ways of doing this. There's 2 ways of doing the S that I'm talking about here. You can design a setting and then add the character to it. Okay, so this would be, for example, you've spent 3-4 paragraphs saying something along the lines of, our story takes place in a planet far, far away and a long time ago, kind of like Star Wars does. And then it's saying, there's a desert, and in that desert there's this small town. The small town is abandoned by the rest of the planet, and it's an outskirts community that's constantly being taken advantage of, and thieves and crime are running rampant. On the 4th house on the left, John lives in this community. That's a really cheesy example. But you created a setting and then you added a character to it. Okay, that's one way of developing a situation and setting character development. The other approach would be to simultaneously develop character and setting. Oh boy. And in fact, let me get my typos fixed. This also, you might add conflict in the middle of that. If you might start your story off with this conflict in a location with a character. That is called en media res writing. En media res. The middle of action. The middle of problem. Okay? The middle of action is what that stands for in Latin. En media res writing will start with a character running or fleeing or fighting or having some sort of conflict with little buildup, right? We are not building up to this. We are starting in it, okay? The start. Let me add that. starts with character, and then the setting and the character are developed at the exact same time. The character is running through a landscape that sprawls as wide as da 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 da, or is fighting in this barren wasteland, or on top of a mountain, or training for this to come, da 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 da, right? So the character and the setting are developed at the exact same time, and that conflict is typically a piece of that. Okay, so that's where we start with situation. We're going to create a setting and add a character to it, or we're going to develop a setting, character, and conflict all at once in media res. Those are like our two big options. Obviously, you can deviate from that, but this typically will be, if you do the first option, it will be 2 to 3 paragraphs and then introduce character. Okay? If you do the second option, you're going to literally just start writing paragraph, right? Your paragraph and your setting will be built in together. Setting and character paragraphs right away. Oh my goodness, typing. I still have my finger injury and typing is not my strong suit. So, all right. After that S, that's kind of how we're starting this story off. We have P. And I bet you can guess what P stands for. It's physical appearance, right? You have to tell me what your character looks like. Tell readers what your character looks like. You can determine how much detail you want to go into. Like, the level of detail is optional. For fantasy and sci-fi, I personally recommend higher levels of detail rather than lower levels of detail, because the character's fake and you really want to make sure that they understand this character appearance thing. But the level of detail is optional. If you do a high level of detail, you're probably going to do a whole paragraph just of physical appearance, versus a low level of detail will be maybe one sentence. But you can choose what range you want to use. And you're going to include things such as age. You can go with physical traits. Hair color, eye color, skin color, height, things like that. Those would be physical traits. You can go with clothing details. Those aren't always relevant. Sometimes they're relevant. You think like Gandalf, tall wizard, long flowing beard, pointy hat, gray robe, right? Those details are kind of a, aged physical traits, clothing are all important in that sense, versus in some characters, the physical traits are less important or the clothing is less important. But, this is also a really great time to add quirks. And I'm a big fan of quirks. These are traits that are unique to the character, to your character. You probably are only going to do it for your main character. You don't give quirks, physical appearance quirks, to your secondary characters quite as much. But like the most classic example of this is, think Harry Potter, right? His physical quirk is a lightning bolt scar. That physical appearance quirk, no other character in any creative work has this lightning bolt scar. Typically, a quirk will be a part of the storyline, right? Harry Potter has this scar because he was attacked when he was a baby, because 12 years ago, I can't remember how old Harry is in the very first book, he was supposed to be killed because this evil wizard knew that his parents were this, would have an offspring that would kill him eventually, whatever. This quirk, though, you don't just randomly have a scar on your forehead. That scar means something to the story. So, yeah, that's physical appearance. So we have situation, we have physical appearance, and then we have A, which is action. All right. If you do an in media res beginning, the action component and setting component of your story's exposition occur at the same time. Because what is an action? An action is, you're right, this is you're telling your readers what your character is currently doing. In media res stories, they are running, jumping, hiding, fighting, right? In media res, what they are doing is the conflict of the story. It's happening. In a more traditional slow setting format where you add the setting and then the character, your character may be... Why didn't it go? I don't get that. There we go. In a more traditional give the setting, give the character format, your character is going to be outside of conflict, so the action might be peaceful in a traditional exposition. Okay, reading, sitting and relaxing underneath an oak tree, right? Typically, this action that's peaceful is still related to the setting, but it's not necessarily like this action-packed conflict action. It might just be resting. For example, in The Hobbit, Bilbo's getting, or not The Hobbit, in The Lord of the Rings, Bilbo's getting ready for his birthday party. There's not a big conflict to take over the world at this point. He's just getting ready for his 11th birthday party and giving out gifts, right? So there's it's peaceful, it's fitting the Shire, it's fitting the scene. It's not this conflict moment that's banging you over the head with world domination. So that is kind of the two types of action you have. You have in media res, where conflict starts, setting starts, character starts, or you have traditional setting, physical appearance. Now what are they doing? Okay. All right, now I want to get to the juicy ones. Inner thoughts. The I is so important. You are telling readers what your character is thinking. And this is not just, what am I going to eat for dinner? This is an opportunity to develop what's called inner conflict. Okay? All right. You will use this throughout the story. Use this throughout the story. But it should start early. Start it early. Because this is a connection point. This is a way to make your fake character seem real. This is a way to get buy-in from your readership, right? Because this character is in a different place, different time, different environment. But they're just like you because they're going through X, Y, or Z, right? So inner thoughts. We're not just talking like, what's my plan for the day? We're talking about self-doubt. We're talking about issues with other characters, or acceptance might be a way of putting that. We're talking about feelings of nervousness, feelings of shame or guilt, right? Because something wrong, they did something wrong. Depends on your story, but giving inner thinking right away is just such a great way of building characters, you guys. You don't need to overdo this one. This one can be like 1 to 2 sentences. You don't need to overdo this, okay? And then finally, R is relationships. This is just a natural segue, okay? If you give inner thinking, my guess is those inner thinking, that development that you create will have a relationship component, right? It's other characters get involved, other characters, and it's about how your character, tell readers how your character fits into the world, not just setting wise, with other characters. Okay, I'm going to delete that. So if they have, for example, if they have self-doubt, it's because growing up, this happened with my family. This made me doubt myself. That my siblings and I felt this way, right? It's growing up, relationship with others, with other characters leads to this, right? If a character is feeling shame, it's because they treat another character a certain way. If they're feeling nervousness, it's because this thing's coming up with this other character, right? So it's very relationship centered. Inner thinking and relationships go hand in hand. And it's very important because this allows you to develop some other characters. Yay, that's awesome. Easy, okay? So what does this all look like? Well, first of all, know that you do have a SPAIRS writing practice assignment due Sunday by 11:59. Easy peasy. Shouldn't take too long. The description of this assignment is in Moodle. I might change the due date. 28, 29. I'm going to go 131. Let's do Wednesday night by 11:59. I'll give you a few extra days because I'm a little behind on my recording schedule and my video uploads. So Wednesday, okay? 11:59 Wednesday. But let me just give you a really quick example of how I would do this. I'm going to do this all from scratch. You're going to hear me thinking aloud. It might not be the prettiest thing of all time. I'm going to create a character, and I'm going to follow the SPAIRS or the SPAIR writing model that I've shown you. Very first thing is situation. So I'm just going to Jack. Oops, let me make this not bold. I'm just creating a name. I can change it later. I could say character name, whatever. But Jack, I typically use Jack for my names until I come up with a real name. I use Jack and Jane, and then I change names later. Names should be significant, right? You want your characters to be named something meaningful. But you don't have time to just think through that all the way to the end. So just give them a name, and then you can change it later. Willow, the giant willow. In the field across from his home. This was Jack's safe place, where he went when the world felt like chaos. Okay, all right, situation. Today was a particularly turbulent day. Jack learned from a friend through the grapevine that his family was to be sent far away due to some crimes in his family history that he had no clue about. I'm making literally all of this up. I am just trying to create a situation. I'm trying to create a conflict. This is in media res, right? So now I need to get into, I got this situation going. I went with the fast and loud approach of in media res. Now I got to get you some character description, some physical appearance. Jack was 12. He was short for his age and had a ruddy appearance with sandy blonde hair that got in his eyes when he ran. I don't know why I felt like including that. Just did. We'll change it later if I need to. His family's poverty meant that his shoes had holes in them. His jeans were ripped at the knees. His shirt was slightly too small. To hide these marks of shames, Jack would intentionally walk barefoot and shirtless wherever he went. And people had a perception that he was wild and untamed. I literally just like going for it, you guys. I don't have a story in my mind. I should have come up with a story in my mind before I wrote this. Okay, I've done some physical appearance stuff. That physical appearance is kind of leading to some action. The action already is that he's sitting below this willow. Under the willow. Alright, and I'm going to do some inner thoughts. I have to get to it quickly or people will get bored. Jack thought over and over about his life. What had his family done for him? Excuse me. Done for him. Why should he also be outcast and sent away for the sins of someone he had never met? His ruminations crossed his mind as the sun set. Okay, I'm going to get into relationships. His parents didn't care where he was, or if he came home for supper. Night. The moon was already out, and it was small. The night would be dark. The perfect night to run away. Okay, this was just a total attempt at creating a character. This was literally unplanned and unthought, but I followed this model. Situation. I created a situation, physical appearance. I gave you 2-3 sentences about what he looks like, and then action. He's sitting below a willow tree, contemplating inner thoughts, running away because his family relationships is estranged and impoverished and being sent away for something. I think kind of what this story is going to turn into, like the premise, like since I didn't really think about this in advance, this would be some sort of like intergalactic Holocaust. Would be probably where this ends up going, where like his family gets sent away and killed, and then he is running around. He's left them, but then he learns about this happening to his family, and he has these mixed feelings on if he should feel guilty and avenge them or not. And then perhaps some things happen with the law where they're chasing after him and he has to get away, and it leads to this kind of dystopian conflict, right? I don't have any of this planned. It's just what has come to my mind as I created a setting. It is better to have your premise in mind and then create your character. I probably did this backwards, but I wanted to create a video that modeled how the SPAIR writing process can lead to a really good introduction to a story, whether or not you even have it all figured out, right? You don't need to have it all figured out in order to begin the writing process. The writing sometimes just leads to the conflict and starts to lead to the process. You should plan it out. You should plan it out for sure. And you're going to do what I just did by Wednesday at midnight. Okay, you're going to create a premise, a situation, and then you're going to introduce a character with the physical appearance, actions, inner thoughts, relationships. This is not going to be 250 plus words. I think this is probably going to have to be 500 plus words, if I'm honest. There's just not a great way of doing this quickly. How many words did I have? Let's just see. Tools, word count. Oh, I guess I just had 221. Okay. We can do 250. I'd like you to probably err on the more than 250, though. Don't do less than 250. I did less than 250. That's kind of shocking to me. But that's the assignment that I've got for you guys, and that's my example of me doing it using the SPAIR writing process. Use this process a lot. I've done this a ton, right? I use the SPAIR all the time. Ever since I learned about it, it was Paris when I learned about it, or pairs, but I've switched some letters around, and this is what works for me to create characters, and it's been really effective ever since I've started this. So give that a shot. Okay, that's your assignment as well. I'll get that added to Moodle. You can check out this video and the notes as you need to, and let me know if you need any help. All right, see ya. Bye.